Every man hungers for respect, yet most wander this world shackled by weakness. And weakness is a disease. It makes others dismiss you, exploit you, forget you. The weak are trampled, the strong are obeyed. This is the cruel law of life. But if you listen until the end, you will learn how to strip weakness from your soul and rise with the presence of one who cannot be ignored. This is the knowledge that separates masters from servants. The hook of power and weakness. Every man walks into the world believing he has strength within him. He imagines that his will is unbreakable, that his voice will command attention, and that his existence carries weight. Yet most discover, too late, that their supposed strength is nothing but illusion. What they mistake for power is a frail mask, easily shattered when confronted by the harsh demands of life. The truth is simple, and cruel weakness is the one sin that the world does not forgive. It does not matter how kind you are, how loyal, or how intelligent. If you appear weak, you will be discarded, ignored, and forgotten. Weakness carries a scent, and those around you can smell it. It seeps into your gestures, your tone, your very posture. It is hesitation in your voice when you are expected to speak with clarity. It is the downward glance of your eyes when another stares into them with dominance. It is the trembling of your spirit when confronted with resistance. And once the scent of weakness escapes, others instinctively take advantage. They push boundaries. They impose their will. They treat you as less than them, because weakness invites exploitation. Understand this: power is not merely about riches, armies, or authority. Power begins with perception. A man who appears strong commands respect long before he proves anything. A man who seems weak loses all respect before he even has a chance to act. The game of life is played with masks, and the first mask you must choose is the one of strength. To show weakness is to reveal your throat to the wolves. Consider how society treats those who project strength, regardless of their true capacity. The confident man, even if hollow within, is listened to, admired, and followed. He carries himself with the assurance of someone destined to rule. His presence shifts the air in the room. Others begin to bend toward his will, even unconsciously. Now place beside him a man of greater intelligence, perhaps even greater talent, but lacking in command. His voice falters, his stance wavers, his certainty crumbles under scrutiny. The crowd dismisses him, not because he lacks ability, but because he has shown weakness. In the arena of life, ability is nothing without the appearance of strength. Weakness is despised because it disrupts order. A weak man is unreliable. He cannot defend himself, let alone others. He brings burden rather than security. The powerful instinctively avoid him, while the ambitious see him as a stepping stone to climb higher. To tolerate weakness in yourself is to become prey. To tolerate weakness in others is to invite decay into your circle. A structure is only as strong as its weakest pillar, and once weakness is permitted, collapse becomes inevitable. But weakness is not only external, it is also internal. It is hesitation, doubt, fear of judgment, the endless habit of second-guessing. How many opportunities are lost because a man chose to delay instead of act? How many victories are handed to rivals because a man feared to seize them? Weakness within becomes weakness without, and the world always punishes it. No ruler, no leader, no man who rose to significance ever did so by embracing fragility. The world crowns those who assert themselves without trembling. There is a reason why those who hold power seek to crush weakness immediately when they find it in themselves. They know it is contagious. Weakness in one decision spreads to another. Hesitation in one moment grows into paralysis in the next. Soon, the habit of yielding becomes a man's nature, and once that nature is cemented, he is no longer capable of commanding respect. He becomes one of the countless faces in the crowd, nameless and unremarkable, tolerated only so long as he serves the strong. The hook lies here: if you do not erase weakness, it will erase you. The world does not permit neutrality in this matter. You will either project power or submit to it. You will either command respect or surrender it. There is no middle ground, for weakness, once exposed, cannot be hidden again. It clings to you, marks you, defines you in the eyes of others. And from that moment, the possibility of rising above vanishes, because no one crowns a man who carries the stain of fragility. The nature of weakness. To understand the force that enslaves men and keeps them bound beneath the heel of others, one must look closely at the true nature of weakness. It is tempting to believe weakness is merely physical, a frail body, an untrained hand, a lack of strength in battle or labor. But the more destructive form of weakness does not reside in the muscles. It resides in the soul. Weakness is hesitation when a decision must be made. It is the trembling of will when confronted with opposition. It is the inability to impose one's presence upon the world, the failure to assert dominance in the moments where power is contested. A man with a strong body, but a weak spirit, is no different than a decorated sword left rusting in its scabbard. Appealing in appearance, but useless when the moment of necessity arrives. Weakness corrupts the individual from within. It whispers lies that paralyze action. Wait until tomorrow. This risk is too great. Perhaps someone else will decide for you. These thoughts grow like a parasite in the mind, feeding on fear and hesitation. A weak man convinces himself that in avoiding conflict he preserves peace, but in truth he is only yielding territory, piece by piece, until he has nothing left to call his own. He becomes a silent spectator in his own life, a man moved by the will of others, a shadow trailing behind those who dare to act. Society has little mercy for such men. It praises strength, confidence, and boldness, even when they mask ignorance or error. At the same time, it scorns hesitation and timidity, even when these traits come from intelligence or caution. The weak discover that their virtues are overlooked, because their weakness drowns them out. A man who hesitates in command will lose his soldiers to another leader who speaks with fire. A man who doubts his value will watch others of lesser ability surpass him, simply because they dared to step forward without trembling. In every field, politics, war, commerce, or love, the weak are not merely ignored, they are trampled. Weakness does not even need to be real to bring destruction. The perception of weakness alone is enough to invite ruin. A single moment of indecision in public, a flicker of fear in the eyes, a faltering word spoken at the wrong time. These are all seized upon by rivals as proof that a man is unworthy of respect. From that instant, he is marked, and his downfall accelerates. Even if he tries to correct himself later, the stain remains, for once a man is judged weak, suspicion of his weakness lingers in every interaction thereafter. Thus, weakness is not only an internal flaw, it is a brand burned into the face of one who allows it to show. The nature of weakness is also strategic. Those who recognize weakness in others see opportunity. Just as a predator circles the slowest prey in the herd, ambitious men circle those who waver. Weakness is the crack in the wall through which enemies invade. It is the loose thread that, once pulled, unravels an entire garment. The rival who notices your hesitation will exploit it. The ally who senses your lack of resolve will turn away from you and seek stronger company. The subordinate who perceives softness in your command will grow bold in defiance. Weakness is never contained, it spreads outward, reshaping how the entire world responds to you. In the private chambers of the mind, weakness also breeds self-contempt. A man who knows he should have spoken, but remained silent, who knows he should have acted but stood still, begins to despise himself. Each failure to act deepens his shame, and that shame feeds his paralysis. He becomes trapped in a cycle. His weakness breeds inaction. His inaction breeds failure, and his failure breeds further weakness. Slowly, he loses all faith in his own ability to rise. This is the true death of the spirit, not defeat at the hands of enemies, but surrender to one's own fear. The most dangerous form of weakness is dependency. The weak man cannot stand alone, so he clings to others for guidance, protection, and direction. But dependency is a chain that grows heavier with time. He becomes incapable of making choices without approval, incapable of moving without support. His very identity dissolves into the will of others. He is no longer a man, but a tool, and tools are discarded once they no longer serve purpose. To grasp the nature of weakness, one must recognize it for what it is, not a temporary flaw, not a harmless trait, but a disease that consumes every corner of life if left unchecked. It poisons judgment, corrodes respect, and leaves a man defenseless before the ambitions of others. It is a mark that once visible cannot be hidden. For men remember weakness long after they forget strength. The transformation of the individual, the man who begins in weakness, is not condemned to remain there forever. The transformation from fragility to strength is possible, but it demands the sacrifice of comfort, the abandonment of excuses, and the relentless construction of a new self. The world does not reward intentions or dreams. It rewards the man who reshapes his being until he embodies the qualities that command respect. To transform the individual is to strip away the habits that mark him as prey and forge within him the presence of a predator. It is to craft not only power, but the appearance of power, for the two are intertwined in the eyes of those who judge. The first step in transformation is the recognition of weakness. Many men die never realizing that their downfall came not from their enemies, but from their inability to master themselves. They excuse their failures as the cruelty of fate or the malice of others, when in truth it was their own hesitation, their own doubt, their own submission that opened the door. Transformation begins when a man admits that he is the architect of his condition. To deny weakness is to remain chained by it. To see it clearly, without veil or deception, is the beginning of liberation. Once weakness is identified, it must be confronted with discipline. Discipline is the fire that burns away fragility and tempers strength. It is the refusal to be ruled by appetite, laziness, or fear. A man who cannot master his body will never master his destiny. If sleep seduces him, if food overpowers him, if lust and anger drag him by the neck, he is a servant, not a master. Transformation demands that he rise above these impulses, bending them to his will, until they no longer control him but serve him as weapons. Hunger becomes fuel for ambition. Anger becomes the spark of strategy. Fear becomes the sharpened edge of caution. Equally important is the cultivation of presence. The world judges not only what a man is, but what he appears to be. A weak spirit can be hidden behind a mask of certainty, and in time, the mask becomes the face. If a man walks with command, speaks with conviction, and looks upon others without lowering his gaze, he begins to radiate strength even before he has perfected it. The transformation of the individual requires this art of illusion, to cloak oneself in strength, until it is no longer illusion, but reality. Men obey confidence even before they verify its legitimacy, for human beings are drawn to the appearance of certainty as moths to flame. The transformed man also learns the silence of power. The weak expose themselves with endless chatter, eager to prove worth through words. But the one who speaks little, who listens more than he reveals, who weighs every word as though it were a blade, such a man appears dangerous. His silence is not emptiness but calculation. It unsettles others, forcing them to wonder what storms gather behind his eyes. Transformation demands this restraint, for the man who cannot control his tongue cannot control his destiny. Moreover, transformation is inseparable from boldness. The weak man waits for the perfect moment, but the transformed man seizes the moment and makes it perfect by his action. He does not beg for opportunity, he creates it. He does not ask for permission, he asserts his will. Even when the risk is great, he advances, for he knows that hesitation is more fatal than failure. The world forgives audacity more readily than timidity. A bold mistake can be corrected, but cowardice leaves scars that no victory can erase. Transformation also demands the reshaping of one's circle. The weak surround themselves with comfort, with companions who mirror their timidity, who reassure them in their mediocrity. The strong gather around those who sharpen them, who challenge them, who force them upward. The individual who seeks transformation must cut away the parasites who drain his resolve and replace them with allies who reflect strength. A man becomes the company he keeps, and weakness multiplied by weakness produces nothing but decay. The journey is relentless, for transformation is not an act but a continual process. Every day, the individual must prove to himself that he is not slipping back into fragility. Every decision becomes a test. Do I act with command or do I yield? Do I impose my will or do I surrender? The man who seeks transformation must live as though the eyes of the world are upon him, for indeed they are, and the slightest sign of weakness invites the wolves once more. The essence of transformation is this: to take what was once frail, hesitant, and overlooked, and to hammer it into something unbreakable, undeniable, and unforgettable. To walk into a room and alter its atmosphere. To stand before adversaries and see them hesitate where once you trembled. To become the figure that others measure themselves against, knowing that you have crossed the abyss from weakness into power and burned the bridge behind you. The tools of power is not a gift. It is a skill forged through knowledge, discipline, and the deliberate use of strategies that others overlook or fear to employ. Those who rise to prominence understand that strength alone is insufficient. To dominate, one must master the tools that manipulate perception, control interactions, and bend circumstances to one's will. These tools are subtle, yet deadly, invisible to the untrained eye, yet capable of reshaping the world in the hands of the resolute. To command respect, to instill fear, to be obeyed, one must first understand the instruments of power and wield them without hesitation. The first tool is mastery over oneself. A man who cannot govern his emotions, impulses, or desires is incapable of governing others. Rage, jealousy, or panic are weaknesses that reveal themselves to those who observe closely. The skilled man transforms these forces into calculated instruments. Anger becomes a signal to rally allies or intimidate rivals. Fear becomes an internal compass, guiding cautious movements that avert unnecessary losses. Desire, once disciplined, becomes fuel for strategy rather than distraction. Self-mastery is not merely internal. It is the foundation upon which every other tool rests. Without it, even the cleverest tactics crumble beneath the weight of ungoverned passions. The second tool is silence and discretion. Words are power, yet they can be weapons or chains, depending on how they are wielded. The weak speak too much, revealing intentions, vulnerabilities, and doubts. The strong speak sparingly, letting every phrase carry weight, calculating the impact of each syllable. Silence becomes a shield and a blade, for it creates mystery, generates respect, and compels others to fill the void with assumptions favorable to you. Discretion in speech allows a man to navigate dangerous waters, making alliances and neutralizing threats before his position is challenged. The third tool is perception management. The world is governed as much by appearances as by reality. A man who appears powerful, even if his strength is not yet absolute, commands attention, obedience, and trust. This requires a deliberate crafting of gestures, posture, expression, and presence. Every movement, every look, every tone of voice must signal confidence, certainty, and authority. Rivals measure your strength by what they see, not what you think yourself capable of. Therefore, the projection of power becomes as vital as its actual possession. The man who understands this can turn even fear into respect, suspicion into admiration, and hesitation into compliance. Another critical tool is strategy in relationships. Allies, enemies, and competitors alike are resources to be managed. The strong man recognizes that loyalty is earned, not demanded. He treats allies as instruments to be sharpened, not toys to be indulged. He observes enemies carefully, learning their weaknesses, anticipating their moves, and using their ambitions to serve his own ends. Even those who appear neutral or harmless may be turned into assets, provided the skilled manipulator understands leverage, influence, and the timing of advantage. Relationships are not sentimental, they are tools of control. Those who fail to wield them find themselves isolated, vulnerable, and powerless. The fourth tool is the art of calculated risk. Boldness, when guided by intelligence, becomes a weapon more potent than brute force. The cautious man hesitates, misses opportunities, and cedes advantage. The skilled man evaluates risk with precision, seizes moments that others ignore, and transforms danger into gain. He knows that fortune favors those who act decisively, who push forward while others hesitate, and who use uncertainty as a stage upon which to assert dominance. A single decisive action can alter the course of events and establish a reputation that hesitation could never achieve. The fifth tool is adaptability. Circumstances are ever shifting, allies betray, rivals rise, and fortunes change. The rigid man clings to his plans and falls when the world moves against him. The adept man observes patterns, anticipates change, and adjusts with flexibility while maintaining the appearance of unwavering strength. Adaptability ensures survival, consolidates power, and allows a man to strike where others are vulnerable. It is the combination of foresight, cunning, and patience that allows the strong to turn challenges into opportunities and threats into stepping stones. Finally, the tool that binds all others together is relentless vigilance. Power is not a state. It is a constant effort, a continuous watchfulness. Even the most disciplined, strategic, and commanding man must remain alert, for weakness can emerge silently, unnoticed until it is too late. Every decision, every word, every interaction becomes a test of control. The man who wields these tools effectively does so not once, but habitually, embedding them into his nature until they operate as instinct, turning him into a figure whose authority is undeniable and whose influence cannot easily be contested. The call to ruthless action, knowledge without action, is impotent. A man may understand the nature of weakness, master himself, and wield the tools of power, yet if he hesitates to act, all preparation is wasted. The call to ruthless action is the final and most crucial step in the journey from fragility to dominance. It is the recognition that the world rewards those who move decisively and punishes those who linger in contemplation. Weakness is not merely a condition. It is an invitation to be consumed by those more daring. To survive, to ascend, one must act with purpose, speed, and unyielding determination. Ruthless action demands that every decision be governed by clarity of intent. Hesitation is the luxury of the powerless. Those who wait too long allow rivals to define reality for them. Every opportunity carries risk, but indecision is the greatest risk of all. The man who acts decisively, even in the face of uncertainty, seizes the advantage, shaping circumstances rather than submitting to them. He recognizes that fortune favors the bold, not the timid, and that every day wasted in inaction is a victory surrendered to others. Inaction is weakness made manifest. Decisive action is strength realized. Action, however, must be guided by strategy. Impulsiveness masquerading as boldness is folly. The man who moves without calculation may achieve a fleeting success, but he will inevitably encounter consequences he cannot control. The call to ruthless action is therefore not reckless, but measured, precise, and purposeful. It is the deployment of the self, disciplined, cunning, and resolute, into the theater of life, where power is contested, alliances shift, and enemies lurk. Every gesture, every word, every decision becomes a tool to consolidate position, intimidate rivals, and compel obedience. Fear must be confronted with deliberate courage. The weak man trembles in the face of danger, while the strong recognizes fear as both signal and fuel. He does not allow fear to paralyze him. Instead, he channels it into preparation, into focus, into the sharpness of execution. Courage is not the absence of fear, but mastery over it. The call to ruthless action is inseparable from this courage, for without it, knowledge and strategy remain inert, and the world will continue to shape the man who refuses to shape himself. Timing is also essential. The man who acts too early exposes his intentions and loses leverage. The man who acts too late forfeits opportunity and allows others to define the terms. The transformed individual observes the currents of events, calculates the movements of allies and rivals, and strikes when conditions favor him most. Ruthless action requires both patience and immediacy, a paradox that only the disciplined and perceptive can resolve. To act effectively is to command reality itself, bending it to one's will before resistance can gather. Sacrifice is the price of ruthless action. The man who seeks to erase weakness must be willing to abandon comfort, affection, and complacency. Every indulgence, every distraction that weakens focus, becomes an enemy to be removed. The pursuit of strength is not a gentle endeavor. It is relentless, consuming, and unforgiving. A single compromise with weakness allows it to resurface, undermining effort, confidence, and authority. Ruthless action, therefore, requires the discipline to act, even when easier choices tempt the spirit. To impose one's will on oneself with the same vigor that is imposed on the world. Ruthlessness also entails confronting others without hesitation. Allies must be held accountable, rivals neutralized, and threats removed before they manifest. The man who fears confrontation allows weakness to fester in others and in himself. To act ruthlessly is to impose order where chaos threatens, to assert dominance where hesitation reigns, and to demonstrate that indecision will not be tolerated. In this manner, The transformed individual signals to all that weakness is unwelcome, and that only strength will survive in his presence. Finally, ruthless action consolidates identity. It is the bridge from potential to reality, from understanding to execution, from contemplation to command. The man who acts decisively leaves behind the shadow of doubt, hesitation, and fragility. Every step taken, every risk embraced, every enemy confronted is a declaration that weakness will no longer dictate the terms of his existence. The world judges by results, not intentions, and the man who moves with unrelenting purpose becomes the architect of his own destiny, shaping events rather than being shaped by them. You have seen the truth: weakness is not forgiven, hesitation is not tolerated, and those who fail to act are trampled underfoot. But knowledge alone does not suffice. The path to power, to command, to being remembered, demands that you rise above fear, doubt, and indecision. Transform yourself, master your mind, discipline your body, and wield the tools of influence with precision. Step boldly into the world, and let no hesitation define your fate. Every action, every choice, every decision is your chance to reshape destiny itself. Do not linger in the shadow of weakness, for the world will not wait. If you are ready to continue this journey, to uncover more truths that expose vulnerability and reveal the path to mastery, subscribe and join the ranks of those who do not merely survive, but dominate, command, and endure. Your transformation begins now, and there is no turning back.